grade 11s. Yes, you're hanging out with Looney yet again, and we're with Aslam now. Aslam, how are you?
Good, Looney. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. What are we doing for the mindsetters?
Today, grade 11s, we are starting full swing with your revision. Exams are around the corner, and today we kick off with important sections of energy building and energy consumption, that is photosynthesis and respiration.
Yes, mindsetters, you heard it. Aslam just perfectly for you. So I hope you guys have your notepads, you have your pens, you're ready to take down notes. Just to tell you guys, we do have an awesome learning hub and exam revision content on our Samsung devices. If you have yourself a premium Samsung smartphone or a Samsung tablet, you can download the learning hub and get awesome exam revision content on those devices. And it is for free. Some is for free, guys. Some is for like $8.37. I won't take much time. I'll just show you that's all our content there on our awesome Samsung devices. But if you don't have a Samsung device and you're wondering, but Looney, how can I get one? Well, we do have a Learn Extra exam revision marathon competition going on. All you need to do is download your show notes. Right at the bottom of the notes, the last page, there's a race number. What you do with that race number is that you fill it in on an entry form on www.mindset.co.za/learn/win, and it will be sent into an entry form, and we might just be having a lucky draw maybe today, maybe tomorrow, I don't know, but make sure you stay glued to your screens and you keep your eyes glued, because on the live shows we'll have all our lucky draws in there at random, guys. So please just don't ask, Looney, when is it random? But I gave you a little wink just to give you a hint. So make sure you do that, mindsetters, and you enter, because it's an awesome device. We already had a winner for the first one, so CISO 1, so we're now in leg 2. So make sure you enter. You can hit me up on Facebook, on facebook.com/learnextra, on Twitter @learnextra. You can download the revision notes for exam score on www.mindset.co.za/learn/extra/revision. Hope you got it, because now Aslam's going to give you the lesson.
Good, Looney. Thank you. That's quite a bit there. You're talking about that
information
stuff.
overload.
Just remember, my name is in that draw. And maybe just a lucky winner.
You can't.
Guys, welcome again, grade 11s. I'm hoping you are studying. I tell the learners at our school 2-3 weeks ago that if they started that 2-3 weeks ago, at least 4 hours a day over and above your homework you need to give towards your schoolwork. The week after that, when you didn't start yet, that means it must be 6 hours a week. This week, if you didn't start last week and the week before, that means you've got to give about 8 hours a week, a day. 8 hours a day. If you don't start this week, it's going to be 10 hours a day from next week. And that's asking for much. That's half the day almost. So rather you start now, and you can break it up a little bit so that you can give a little bit more in the weekend, so you can cover up for the other 2 hours that you may miss in the week. Have a program. Follow that program. And spread your learning out. Don't cram it, and don't learn all your work for the first day of exams. If you start on the 5th of November, for example, and your first paper is accounting, don't study from now till then only accounting, and from the rest of the time learn day by day what you're writing the next day. You'll be looking for serious trouble. And remember, grade 11s, your grade 11 report is the one that opens the door either for provisional acceptance at the tertiary institution or non-acceptance. In other words, they decline your application. Then you'll have to wait after your grade 12 results and then hope it's better and then apply again. So rather put your effort in now, get a strong foot in. The varsities then start offering you a place, and sometimes if your results are outstanding, they can even offer you bursaries with that. Good. Let's go back to what we are supposed to be doing today, and that is, and I always say that when we are engaging with each other, it must not only be about content, math, science, English, Afrikaans, it must be about education, because we are dealing with human beings, and therefore we need to talk a little bit more than that. Photosynthesis and respiration, nonetheless, we know that these are 2 important processes in organisms. Photosynthesis only takes place in green plants, because they have chlorophyll, which can absorb the radiant energy of the sun and convert it into chemical potential energy. chemical potential energy. Simply means stored energy that can be used later. Now, I also have green, you know, Luni?
Yes.
My green t-shirt.
Yes.
Does that mean I can go out in the sun, spread my legs and hands like this, and stand and absorb all the sun rays? There's some nice bright legs there. Will I be able to photosynthesize?
No.
No, because I do not have chlorophyll, although I have a green shirt. This just dyed, but I don't have chlorophyll. So humans and other animals do not have chlorophyll and therefore cannot manufacture their own food. Therefore, we are directly or indirectly dependent on green plants for our food. What do I mean by that? We get our food via them. In other words, how? I would eat something. I would eat lettuce, or I would eat beans, or any plant that I will eat that has stored this energy during photosynthesis. I get the energy directly. Alternately, if I want to eat meat and I eat chicken or I eat sheep or whatever, they may have eaten something that was from a plant, and then they use the plant energy to store in their muscles, and when we eat that meat, then we are taking that energy from them in that way. We are heterotrophic. Plants that photosynthesize are known as, and this is your grade 10 work, a little bit, autotrophic. And your environment work in grade 11. And respiration, all organisms. And this is something we need to clear up. It's not only plants, it's not only animals. Lots of children think plants photosynthesize and animals respire. No, both. Plants, all plants, and all animals undergo some form of respiration. Whereas photosynthesis is a building up process, an anabolic process. In other words, it's taking raw materials, putting them together, and making a product. The product is food. This food is in the form of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Respiration, on the other hand, takes this food, this product that has been made. So we're saying here, we're getting all the raw materials, and we're making food. And during respiration uses oxygen to burn this food to release energy in the form of ATP, some heat energy, and water vapor. This is what would happen between this process. Now, guys, if you can just understand what we have here on the screen at this point, it already gives you a background on these sections. It is necessary to have a background and understand. Don't just photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is that process where plants manufacture food using radiant energy from the sun, carbon dioxide, and water. Right? And respiration is the step-by-step breakdown of energy-rich molecules like glucose to release energy in the form of ATP and some water vapor and some heat. You're memorizing something that you don't have a clue about what is happening. This is what it is. This is what we are saying. Simplify your work. Anyway, let's move on. Let's start answering some questions today. So what we are saying is, now that we know these two sections in a broad outline, it's not time to teach the section now. It's time to revise. So we go straight into the questions. And what better way in revising than by going over past papers? You have your own past papers from January right up to now. You have neighboring schools that have also written. You have their papers. You have cousins and family and friends, the borders of this country. You can get their papers as well. Get the questions, learn a section, go over the work. So you've gone over photosynthesis and respiration. Now we're going over these questions. So let's look at question 1. And we've put in multiple choice questions so that we can just talk about the skills. We are more interested in the skills of multiple choice here. So where does respiration occur? Where does respiration occur in the animal and the plant shown in a diagram below? So they're showing you a plant and an animal. And a good question, because it's telling you at the outset that respiration does take place in plants and in animals. But they want to know where will it take place. And if you were smart, you'd know that respiration, cellular respiration, cellular respiration. Where would it take place? It would take place in the cells. That's the clue. So we look at this one here. We've got W showing here by the ear of the rat, and X in the tail of the rat, and Z in the leaf, and Y in the root. These things that I mentioned now are all organs. Organs are made up of tissues. Tissues are made up of cells. So that will imply, no, I'm not going to tell you what it implies. You're going to think about that. Let's go back. Now they're telling you it's A, W only, B, W and X, C, W, X and Y, D, W, X, Y and Z. So we need to look at this one. And this is not a great idea of an example to work on our elimination. So let's go back to what we were implying earlier. You thought about it, so now we can talk about it. You thought about it, and we're going to talk about it. So what are we saying? We're saying that it will imply that if an organ is made of tissues and tissues are made up of cells, then all organs will have some form of cells. And cellular respiration takes place in the cell. So it must take place in all of these things, because that's the ear, and there's cells in the ear, and there's cells in the tail, and in the leaf, and in the root. So therefore, your answer would be W, X, Y, and Z, all of these things. Okay? Good? Let's move on. What is happening? All right, 1.2. The following are involved in the process of cellular respiration. This is a difficult one now. The following are involved in the process of cellular respiration. 1, energy. 2, carbohydrates. 3, carbon dioxide. 4, water. And 5, oxygen. Now, which one of the following combinations correctly represents their involvement in the process? Now they're telling you all these guys, energy, carbohydrates, oxygen, carbon dioxide, water, and oxygen are involved. So now we must know what is happening there. So we must know what is the respiration all about. We know that respiration produces energy in a form of heat, in a form of ATP. So if in our equation, the products must be found on this side. And we know that the starting point of respiration would be some form of carbohydrate. For example, glucose or any other example. So those things must be on this side. These are the materials. These are the materials used. And on this side, we're getting the products. And what gas is taken in during cellular respiration? Oxygen. Can you see just the multiple choice questions? The thought, the homework that you have to do in your head to get to this answer teaches you the section. And this is why these questions are put here. Now let's go back to our stories there. Oxygen is number 5. Okay? So number 5 must be on the left-hand side. So already, we can scratch all those 3 out. This is what I was talking about earlier. That other one wasn't a good example. This one is a good example, although it was a bit easy. And that's because I broke it down for you. In the exams, you'll have a little bit more stress. It won't be as easy. What I'm doing here, we call this elimination. Remember, there's only one correct answer. And there are 3 out of 4, 3/4, 75%, 0.75. There are so many wrong answers. So it's easier to find the wrong answers. So find the wrong answers first. Look for the most ridiculous in a multiple choice, scratch it out, and scratch the next one out. Then you'll be left with 2 to choose from. It becomes easier. So in this case here, we'll look at it. Now let's just see if our story is correct there. Right? There you got carbohydrates, you got oxygen. 2 plus 5. Carbohydrates plus oxygen gives us all the others now. Already we've rung those 3. It gives us energy, yes, it's true. It gives us carbon dioxide, yes, it's a byproduct. And it gives us water in the form of water vapor. So that's how we balance that equation there. It's not a balanced equation. A science guy will just now come and shoot me. John will be the first one to shoot me, and all other science educators. It's not a balanced equation scientifically, but in this multiple choice question, that's what we are talking about. This arrow is going to mess me, kill me. All right, the last one, multiple choice. The chemical substance that is used to indicate the presence of starch in leaves. The chemical substance that tells us the presence of starch or any other presence of starch in leaves or any other part of a plant or an animal or in bread or whatever else is which one here? Methylated spirit is definitely not a reagent that you've come across. Clear lime water you've used, but you use that to test carbon dioxide, so that's out. So you're left with these two. Both of these test carbohydrates. Obviously, you know your work, you're going to go straight to the answer. But if you are not very sure, then you can do elimination. Benedict's is used for testing reducing sugars, like disaccharides and monosaccharides. And iodine is used for starch, and your answer is B. And with that, Luni,
Yeah.
it's over to you.
All right. Mindsetters, we are going to take a very short break, and we'll see you straight after this. Welcome back, Mindsetters, from that break. Just a quick reminder of what the Samsung prizes are. So you get a chance to win one of 3 Note 8s. Well, there's 2 left now because Cecil won the other one. One of 3 Tab 3s or one of 3 Tablet 10.1. So if you want to win yourself those great prizes from Samsung, simply download your show notes, get your race number, fill in the entry form, and you will be entered into a lucky draw to stand a chance to win. Just a question here from... No, where did I... Okay.
Shall I read the question
Yes,
from behind
the
the screen?
non-green.
Can
I just want to see who sent it.
All right. Can I read it so long from the back of your
Yes, you
screen? Because I have
can.
X-ray vision.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, the question is...
Got it.
Okay.
It's from... Oh, wow. I'll call you Benjamin Mushasha.
Yeah.
How do non-green plants get food if they don't photosynthesize?
Good question. Benjamin wants to know, how do plants that are not green, we can't say non-green plants, we talk about plants that are not green. In other words, how do plants that do not have chlorophyll? It's a complicated issue in terms of plants and no chlorophyll, but that we'll leave for another day. But the fact that organisms, all organisms that do not have chlorophyll, are directly or indirectly dependent on green plants. Let's take, for example, fungi. Fungi is in a kingdom of its own, the kingdom fungi or fungus. And inside, within this kingdom of fungi, we have the fungus plant called lichen, or spelt lichen. Lichen is an organism that has algae on the inside and fungi on the outside, like a sandwich almost. The algae needs to keep moist. So the fungus forms this layer around it to leave it moist. Whereas the algae has chlorophyll. And the algae manufactures food, and that is how they coexist in this way. Okay? In terms of that there. That's one way in which non-green plants will do that. And let's take the bread mold, for example. The bread mold gets onto bread, and it secretes its, or rather it entrenches its rhizoids into the bread. And from the bread, it absorbs the nutrients that it needs. And that's how it grows. The other fungus, athlete's foot, ringworm, etc., they get their nutrients from you once they get onto your body. So that's how those organisms will obtain food, directly or indirectly. The other question was something to the effect, we tried to read it and decipher your message there, but I think you're trying to ask, do you do a practical exam in this term? Yes, some schools do the practical exam in this term for 100 marks. Others may have done it at the end of the last term. It all depends on your school. If you haven't done it last term, then obvious, you will do it this term. Yeah? And some of our questions that we have here for photosynthesis and respiration actually deal with those pracs. And if you go back to your prior shows, the way you did photosynthesis and respiration live here with Llewellyn and others, then they did those pracs on screen as well. So go back to those shows and watch those things and watch the notes, or rather download the notes, and you can get it from there. Let's move on. So So where we now? We are in question 2. The diagram below illustrates the internal structure of a leaf. Answer the questions based on it. So they're giving you a diagram of a leaf and they're asking you questions. Let's look at the questions. They say identify parts A, B, and E as well as cells C and F. Parts A, B, E, and F, and C and F there, they're telling you there. So in other words, all these labels must be labeled. Okay? A, what area is this here? This is known as the palisade mesophyll. And you learn this in grade 10, and again you repeat it in grade 11 because you need to know it here in photosynthesis, and you need to know it in your transpiration when you deal with that. Okay, B, showing you the cell here, that is the epidermal cell. Notice it's pointing to one cell, or the whole region is epidermis. Okay, then C, okay, so that's the epidermal cell there. The line is a little unclear. It also could be, in this case here, the line is unclear, so it's talking about the epidermis. And this one here then will be an epidermal cell because they say as well as cell seed. So this is an epidermal cell. And then this one here would be the epidermis. Good. All right. D. What they're saying A, B, and cell D. They did not ask you for D, but D pointing to structures within the palisade mesophyll there, and this would be actually chloroplast. E, what is E? There's a space here. It's an air space. Air space. And we want F. Cells F. These are called guard cells. And we don't have a label for it, but the space in between the guard cells, that space there is known as the stoma. Just so we get all the labels correct. Okay, there we go. Notice here they're talking about the cuticle in our answer here, but if you look at the line, the line should have been then, the line may have moved in copying the diagram. If we want cuticle, the cuticle is the structure here. The line on the top, right on the top there. Where is our pen? Okay, where is our yellow? Good. Coming down. There. That would be the cuticle, the line on the top, right? Unfortunately, it moved. Okay, so that's why our answer would be a little bit on intercellular air spaces, epidermal cells, guard cells. We've done all of that. Good. State the role of each of the following in the process of photosynthesis. B is the cuticle in this case here. Let's see. All right, and it's transparent. It allows light to pass through. Also, because it's waxy, it prevents water loss. D is the chloroplast, obviously, and absorbs sunlight, contains chlorophyll for photosynthesis. E, coming back to our diagram, E are the intercellular air spaces, and that is very easy. It is to allow the gases to move through. So carbon dioxide is coming through to photosynthesis and moving in, so it allows the gases, the more spaces it is, it can diffuse easily, and oxygen can diffuse out during photosynthesis. Tabulate two differences between cells C and F. Cells C, that one there, the epidermal cells, and F, the guard cells. They're both epidermal cells, notice. This is also this is the upper epidermis, this is the lower epidermis. Huh? This is the lower epidermis, here at the bottom. The lower epidermis, that is the upper epidermis. But these specific cells here are different from other epidermal cells. And they want you to tabulate these differences. And the differences are simple. In the epidermal cells, it has no chloroplast. The epidermal cells are transparent. They allow light to pass through. Obviously, the guard cell has chloroplast. It's the only epidermal cells that have chloroplast. And this chloroplast helps the guard cells to control the stomatal aperture. Cell C, the epidermal cells, has thin cell walls. In the guard cells, the inner walls are thickened and the outer walls are thin. By the way, just to Guard cells are bean-shaped cells. And I'm saying the inner walls are thick and the outer walls are thin, sorry. All right, good. That's what we're saying there. And then lastly, these are brick-shaped cells, elongated cells, and these are bean-shaped cells. So we're linking now photosynthesis to the organ of photosynthesis. And this is something else we must know. The organ of photosynthesis mainly is the leaf. It can also be parts of the stem that is green, etc. The tissue in the leaf is the palisade and spongy mesophyll. And the organelle, see, can you see we're going down from organ to tissue, and we jumped even the cell. We can talk of palisade cells or parenchyma cells. And from there we go deeper in and we go inside the cell and we look at the organelle. The organelle is the chloroplast. Remember that. Good. This question here is good because it combines the two. And examiners like to ask this type of a question. The schematic representation shows the relationship between two biological processes in a plant cell. Now, obviously, at this juncture, on this show, it's not difficult to identify the two processes because we're only dealing with two processes. But when you write your exams, there's other processes in that particular paper that you have to be wary about. But the minute you see an organelle X and an organelle Y, it should tell you something, but we'll talk about that just now. So, study it and answer the questions that follow. That's straightforward. They're giving you an organelle X. Look at organelle X. Then look at organelle Y. And also look at what's happening here. We can see from this diagram here, glucose is being released by this organelle. And somehow it becomes pyruvic acid. And then it goes into this organelle. And something happens there. We also see an arrow showing 1 going out there and 2 going in there. And we look at labels here A and B, and the numbers 3 and 4 again with arrows coming in and arrows going out. Again, notice the homework before you start your question. You've got to analyze what's happening there first, and then you get into the question. Identify organelles X and Y. X would be, yeah, the mitochondria. Good, mitochondria. And Y would be the chloroplast or plastid. Okay, there you go, mitochondria and the plastid or chloroplast. Name the biological process that takes place in the following organelle. Again, I told you in this show it's easy because it's either photosynthesis and respiration. And you need to link it to these two things. Mitochondria, cellular respiration. Chloroplast, photosynthesis. Okay? And that would be your answer. Cellular respiration and photosynthesis. The arrows 1 to 4 indicate the movement of gases into and out of the organelles. Name the gases represented by 1, 2, 3, and 4. We go on the top. We look at gas 1. Gas 1 is leaving the mitochondria, yeah, going out there. And gas 2 is coming in. The gas 2 is the one that the mitochondria needs for cellular respiration, and that would be oxygen, and that one going out would be the product, and that is carbon dioxide. They're not asking you about other things, they're only talking about gases. And here, 3 is the gas that goes in, and that would be carbon dioxide, and 4 is the gas that's being released, that is oxygen. So again, something that we learn from this, and we got it there. Okay. What we learn from this exercise is what gas is needed for photosynthesis and what gas is needed for respiration. Gas needed for photosynthesis is carbon dioxide. Gas needed for cellular respiration is oxygen. And the gas released during cellular respiration is carbon dioxide. And the gas released during photosynthesis is oxygen. Now, again, misconception number 99. And that is, most learners in primary school, they were told, and they sing it, yeah, plants take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen, and animals take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide. Wrong. bong, wrong, bong, zong, whatever, it's wrong. It's not about plants and animals. It's about the processes. During photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is consumed, is used, and oxygen is released. During respiration, cellular respiration, oxygen is taken in and carbon dioxide is released. So even in plants, when they respire, when cellular respiration takes place, oxygen is what is used. So you must get that right. Name the pigment found in part label B, and that is obviously the chlorophyll pigment there. State the function of that pigment. We know already from the past, it traps radiant energy. Explain the process that takes place in part label A. Part label A is there in the stroma, that area there, the lumen, the stroma of the chloroplast. And that would be the dark phase of photosynthesis takes place, where organic molecules like carbohydrates, fat, and protein are formed. Notice you don't need to know the chemicals reactions that take place. You're just simply saying that it's the dark phase of photosynthesis and compounds are being made there. And last but not least, describe the biological importance of the process that takes place in organelle Y, and that is the chloroplast, and therefore that is about photosynthesis. What's so good, in other words, what's so good about photosynthesis? First of all, photosynthesis releases oxygen, so therefore it helps in the balance of oxygen in nature. It also uses carbon dioxide, so therefore it helps in the balance of carbon dioxide as well. And lastly, because green plants are the only plants that can manufacture food using the sun's ray, they are important in food production. They are producers. Luni.
All right. Mindsetters, we're going to take a break, but just to tell you, if we don't get through your questions during the show, we do have a help desk. So you can go onto www.mindset.co.za/help desk, where you can send your question and it will be answered, guys. So don't sweat if we don't answer it. Help desk is there for a reason. So we'll see you straight after this break. Welcome back, Mindsetters, from that break. I hope you guys are enjoying the show and you're learning more and you're learning extra with us, because we're going the distance together, guys, and we're trying to help you run this lunch lab of grade 11, because we want you to be matrix next year. So Aslam, we have a question from Messiah George. Does glucose turn into pyruvic acid?
Yes. Let's go back to our diagram. Good question there. And there's this diagram. It's telling you that during photosynthesis, glucose is manufactured. So the plant has made this glucose. Now, when the animal or the plant itself, in its cells, it has this glucose. Now, during the process of cellular respiration, in the first phase of cellular respiration, known as glycolysis. Let's look at this diagram again. I think we can learn a lot from this diagram, but let's just first answer your question. During glycolysis, glucose is converted to pyruvic acid. Then, during the second part of cellular respiration, Krebs cycle, the pyruvic acid goes through a series of reactions, and it goes into the mitochondria after that. And in the mitochondria, a series of reactions where ATP is made, plenty ATP. In fact, here, plus minus 36 molecules, and in glycolysis, 2 molecules of ATP, 36 ATP. Together, if you have the whole respiration, aerobic respiration, that means when oxygen is present, we can make 38 molecules of ATP for every glucose molecule that we use. So now let's go back to this diagram again. Good. I'm glad you actually took us back, because I'm seeing something different in this diagram from what the question was actually talking about. So you look at this diagram nicely, you can see they could have told you here process A, process B, and process C. They could have even added that into this dimension. And what is process A? What's taking place in this diagram? Photosynthesis. Why? Because glucose is being manufactured. So photosynthesis there. From there we go to respiration. This is respiration after that. And what's the first phase of respiration known as? Glycolysis. Also anaerobic respiration. That means oxygen is not used to this process, and glucose is broken up into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. This pyruvic acid undergo a series of changes, and they are taken into the mitochondria, where they continue with this series of reactions, and at each step some energy is taken up to make ATP. And remember, what do we mean by make ATP? We mean that we have this situation here, A with P and P, that is ADP, adenosine diphosphate, 2-phosphate. And then we have A with another P and another one P. Adenine triphosphate, ATP. When we say energy is used to make ATP, we mean that the ADP plus P gives us ATP. And ATP minus the P will give us ADP. So this cycle is continuing all the time. When we use energy, we take that phosphate out, we break that bond, and the energy is released for us to do work. Now the ADP is on its own. And when we put the phosphate, this phosphate is associated, this third phosphate is associated with energy. Okay, so that's what we are saying here. So when we're saying ADP makes ATP, we mean we use energy to bond these things together, and in this way the energy is then trapped in that area. When we use this energy, we can look at this energy as spending, spending units. If I tell you, the whole month you've got 500 rands, you must break it up into every day. You're going to do the maths in your head, and you're going to say, look, on Monday I'm going to spend this, Tuesday I'm going to do that. So ATP is our spending. We have these 38 for every glucose molecule that and we have plenty glucose. I mean, if you drink a fizzy drink, how much of glucose is in that fizzy drink? Or if you have a slice of bread, is how much of starch is in there that's going to become glucose during nutrition, which we're going to talk about, by the way, next week. Nutrition is the focus of next week. So in that way, there's lots of glucose, and the ATP is then in your units that you're going to spend over time. So there we are talking about that. Now, if oxygen is not present, then obviously we can only have glycolysis. And there's a different pathway, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in another question. I'm hoping I've answered the question of that, and I've also showed you how we can add to this question. There was another question there about nutrition and about assimilation. What does assimilation mean? Assimilation simply means, we're going to talk about it next week, but the question is there, let's get it out of your head now. I don't want you to bite your nails till next week and say, what is going to be the answer? What is going to be the answer? So assimilation simply means when this energy that you have digested, the food you have digested, becomes part of the cell. And how does something become part of the cell? It is when it is sent to the cell somehow. How is it sent to the cell? From the small intestine, when it's absorbed, it will go into the capillaries, into the blood cells. From the blood cells, it goes to the liver, where something is going to happen to it, depending on what type of food is it. Is it a carbohydrate, is it a fat, or is it a protein? A process takes place there. And after that process, some is being stored and whatever, which we will talk about next week. And the rest then goes to the heart. The one that the body needs goes to the heart. From the heart, it is then sent to all parts of the body where it is used. That is not assimilation. That is transport. That's why I felt I must answer the question. The way the question was posed, is that called assimilation when it's that is transport. Now, when the food in its smallest form comes to the cell then takes that food in and uses that food in different ways, either during cellular respiration, or it can use that food to make bigger food to store. That is what assimilation means. Assimilation means when the food reaches the cell itself, not the red blood cell, the other cells in the body, the normal body cells in the body. The red blood cell and other blood cells, or the plasma even. Not the red blood cell is not even transporting food, it's transporting oxygen. The blood plasma, the liquid part of the blood, is actually transporting the food. That's transport. One is digestion, when we break down the food. After we digest, we absorb the food. That's in the small intestine through the villi. Thereafter, it's in a bloodstream. It must be transported. From there, hepatic portal vein to the liver, and from the liver to the hepatic vein to the heart, and then to all parts of the body. Transport. Once the cell gets this food, and when the cell uses the food, assimilation. In other words, when the food becomes part of the cell, this is known as assimilation. Any other questions, Lou?
Yes. Can we just do questions very quickly?
Let's do quickly.
Pleasure Marco is asking, what is the function of chloroplast?
What is the function of?
Chloroplast.
Who's that Pleasure?
Yes.
Pleasure, that means you're not watching us. And if you were in front of me, then we would have done something else with you, Pleasure, because then it's not a pleasure to answer this question, Pleasure. Okay, good. Pleasure, the question is, what is the function of chloroplast? And we've answered that question Jalo, long time. Jalo means long time, no?
No.
Then?
Dala is a long
I
time.
see, you're talking a different language. Me, I talk another language. I know where I come from. Jalo means long time ago. Okay, what you saying, Dalo?
Dala.
Dala.
Yes.
Okay, so we've answered that question eons ago in my language also. Eh?
Jolly.
Okay, what do we mean by that? Why I said that? We asked that question long time. What is the function of chlorophyll? And by extension, what is the function of chloroplast? Chloroplast is the part in the cell that has the pigment called chlorophyll. And what can it do? It can absorb the rays of the sun and convert that into chemical potential energy. In other words, if you look at the organelle chloroplast, it is the organelle, the main enzymes for photosynthesis. Without chloroplast, photosynthesis is not possible. Good?
Okay. Another question from Spongilo. What does a guard cell do in a structure of a cell?
Guard cell in the structure of a cell. Remember the diagram we had earlier? Shall we go back to it? Let's try. Here we go. There's the diagram. Okay. Here's the guard cells. And I told you the guard cells, the guard cells is guarding this opening. Huh? The opening is called a stoma. So the guard cell's job is to open the stoma or to close it. In other words, it is controlling the size of the pore. The stoma is not a structure. It's simply an opening, mainly at the bottom of the leaf, in the lower epidermis. It can be found on the upper epidermis in certain aquatic plants especially. But here we have it there. And the job of this guard cell is to either open or close the opening. All right? Why is this important? If that opening is open all the time, then water vapor is going to be released from that opening all the time. When the plant feels that, you know what, there's too much water being lost here, so the guard cells then close. When they close, the plant limits water loss. That is the job of the guard cells.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And then Stabiso is asking, what happens to the fungus when all the moisture of the bread is gone?
What happens to the fungus when all the moisture of the bread is gone? What do you think happens to you when there's no more water? You will wither and die, isn't it? You would dehydrate and die. If the food source goes away, the fungus, remember, again, I don't want to go into too much detail, you don't do it in your syllabus, but that would constitute unfavorable conditions for the fungus. And generally, the lower order organisms, when they undergo, or when they come across unfavorable conditions, for example, dry conditions or no food, etc., or too hot or too cold, they undergo sexual reproduction and they form what we call a zygospore. A zygospore is a capsule-like structure which keeps the spores of that organism within that until favorable conditions arise again. And then meiosis will take place and it will give rise to new fungi later. But again, it's not too much for your syllabus. In terms of that, it will either die or it will go into a dormant state until favorable conditions return. Is that it?
Thank you, yes.
Good. That's what we want, guys. We need your questions more than the questions that we have here, because that means something is bugging you and we need to help you with that. Right, now here a boy runs up a hill at 12 kilometers per hour. The graph below shows the rate at which lactic acid accumulates in the blood and muscles while the boy is running. When the boy stops running, most of the lactic acid is removed from the blood and muscles and is eventually converted into various substances. Okay, so they're telling you there the rate at which over time. So as he's running up this hill, this is what's happening to the lactic acid. You can see what's happening to it there, going up there, and then it levels off more or less there on top. And percentage of lactic acid converted into glycogen, 20%. Carbon dioxide, 60%. Glucose, 4%. Protein, 8%. So that's information, against homework that you have to read. How much lactic acid was in the boy's body when he started running? So in time there, when he started running, there's it in this area there, okay? You can read it. There's not. It's between 20 and 0, so obvious it has to be 10, 10 milligrams. You must give the units, and the units are given to you in the graph, milligrams, okay? Next question, describe the relationship between the amount of accumulated lactic acid and the time spent running. So we want to know what's happening as time goes on as this boy is running. And you've got to explain properly. As time passes, as he's running, the amount of lactic acid increases up to about 8 minutes. at which stage it stays more or less constant just above 100 milligrams, okay? As you can see. So basically this question is asking you to read information, not asking you to remember. As time spent running increases, the level actually increases. You can say it's a direct relationship. I do not like that too much because it's not straight line. It moves up, but it also it becomes constant over time, right? When lactic acid is converted to other substances, what percentage remains as lactic acid? Show all calculations. When lactic acid is converted to other substances, what percentage remains? Okay, now you need to go here because this table was dealing with percentages. You can see we had that. If it's a percentage, what must be the total? The total must always be 100%. So we need to add these guys, 60 plus 20, and you'll need a calculator. Guys like us with this gray beards, we don't need calculator because we didn't grow up with OBE. Nah? We grew up with the old system where we had to count on our fingers and our toes. When the toes ran out, then we start counting on our hair. Looney? 60 and 20 is 80, 80, 84, and 8 is 92%. Hey, how did he know that so quickly? And he never had a calculator in the studio. How he managed, Looney? Okay, so 92, 100 minus 92 will give us our answer. Let's see if my calculator in my head is working right. Ah, clever boy, Aslam. 100 minus all of that percentage there, and you get 90 is equal to 8%. Good. Under what circumstances is lactic acid? Now they're asking you about your work. Up to now, you only needed to answer questions from the information provided. Now they're asking you, hey, where did you hear about this guy, lactic acid? Where in your whole cupboard of knowledge does it fit? And there, and because we're doing respiration, you'll know. But which time? When there's no oxygen, when respiration is taking place and there's an absence or there's very little oxygen. That's what happens. Or the oxygen is not reaching the cells fast enough. You're running and you're not fit, so your blood system is not working good enough to send the oxygen enough. And there's not enough oxygen as well. Your breathing is not right and so on. Name and describe the process that results in the formation of lactic. So if there's no or lack of oxygen, what type of respiration takes place then? Yeah? Anaerobic respiration. Aerobic, what's happening? Anaerobic respiration. And in this particular case, it's not just anaerobic general, they're telling you what's forming. And that is lactic acid. So this is lactic acid fermentation, mainly in the muscles of animals. Whereas in the case of plants, it won't be lactic acid fermentation, but it'll be alcoholic. Now, this is not a plant that drinks too much of beer. No, alcoholic fermentation. What it means is that the product, one of the products of this fermentation is alcohol. Right? And that is why anaerobic respiration is useful in the brewing industry to make beer and alcohol and wine, etc., etc. So now we want to describe this process. And again, you don't have to go into too fine details. You need to give us the broad outline of what happens. First of all, the name is anaerobic respiration because they didn't mention it, so you're going to get a mark for that. And what happens? Energy-rich compounds like glucose and are phosphorylated using ATP and are then, you don't have to go into so much detail, you just say are broken down into pyruvic acid. So in other words, what you're saying, glycolysis takes place first. You simply say glycolysis takes place first. After that, if there's no oxygen, pyruvic acid, this is the part of the answer that we need here. And obviously you can see from here, we can't give you 5 marks or something like this. If there is no oxygen, pyruvic acid is converted into lactic acid in animals. That's what you need to say there. Okay? Remember, the paper that we've taken this from is the old native syllabus where the child needed to know much more detail in the section. Describe how water is formed during the process mentioned in question 4.5. How is water formed? And there, when I say oxygen, that's in respiration where oxygen is formed there, not in that one there. Oxygen is used as a final acceptor of the hydrogen ions which have lost energy, and oxygen combines with the hydrogen to form water. Simple, simple explanation. When oxygen is available, oxygen is only used at the end for the hydrogen. Hydrogen plus oxygen will give us water. I'm not going to give you the whole chemical formula and so on. We're not going to go in. You just need to say hydrogen combines with oxygen to form water. Remember, if that oxygen is not there, then this whole cycle stops, and it stops there where we spoke about alcoholic fermentation or lactic acid fermentation. Good. During an investigation, a pot plant was placed, and here's one of your practical stories, in a dark cupboard for 3 days. One of the green leaves on the pot plant was then partially covered with a tin foil. After the plant had been exposed to sunlight for 2 days, the leaf was removed from the plant and treated as shown in the diagram. Okay, so here's your story. We've taken out a leaf, we had a tin foil there, we've taken that leaf, and we are now doing all of these things here, and this is your prac, and I'm not going to go into the details. We're just going to name the two chemicals labeled A and B. There's a chemical here, there. This is boiling water, and there's another chemical there, né? And the chemical inside there where I got the dots. Name these two chemicals. If you know your work, then you would say that these chemicals are ethanol or alcohol in the beaker and iodine solution in the other one. Why is substance A used here? Why is the alcohol used? To remove chlorophyll from the leaves. Which part of the leaf, the covered part, the one where we had the foil, or the uncovered part, will give a positive result? Obvious, it will be the uncovered, because the uncovered part is getting sunlight and the covered part is not getting sunlight. So what were we proving here? What were we trying to show? We wanted to show that sunlight is necessary for photosynthesis. Name one precaution you would take when performing this investigation. Do not boil the alcohol directly over the flame, because alcohol is inflammable, it will burn. Okay? Use forceps to remove the leaf from the hot alcohol and boiling water. You can't go and put your finger in there, you will then burn. Huh? This one here on the, just look at the diagram. We just want to know what's the aim of this investigation, is to illustrate that oxygen is released during photosynthesis. Why was the test tube filled with water? To make the apparatus airtight. We want to find out whether any gas is produced, therefore we must not have any gas to start with. Why was it necessary to leave the apparatus near a warm, sunny window? Obviously, to make sure that the temperature is right and we're giving the plant enough sunlight to make food in the process of photosynthesis. Name the gas. It's obviously going to be oxygen. And describe one way in which you would taste for this gas. And here again, you're going to take out the test tube and you're going to insert a glowing splinter. A glowing splinter is if you burn wood and you take away the flame, the glowing splinter means the wood is going to be red. We put it in a test tube, it bursts into a flame because oxygen supports combustion. Or we can also use steel wool, and we put the steel wool inside because oxygen causes rust to steel. The steel wool would rust. Those are the two tests for oxygen that we can do. I don't think we can do this experiment here, but let's look at it. The first one, gas bubbles, we've done the same thing here. I want to then go, we can't go any further, Looney. That's about all we have time for today.
All right.
So guys, that's as far as we can go today. I'm hoping that you've gone through your processes. If you have any questions, remember what Looney said on the help desk, and we can help you thereafter.
Yes. Thank you so much to Aslam for giving us a great lesson. Mindsetters, thank you so much for tuning in. Everything of the best for your exams. Have fun, guys. Study hard and do your best in everything that you do. Remember, if we don't get to your questions during the show, help desk is there for you. mindset.co.za/help desk. Thank you for tuning in. We love you, and we'll see you same time, same place. Goodbye from us.